Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
My name is Miriam, and I am the voice of Stockton.
This is KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Welcome to Connections, Peace and Justice Radio. Right on the voiceofstockton.org, broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube with your hosts, Bruce Giudici and Christie Kelley.
All right,
You're on.
Yeah, well, we just thought we would discuss the Peace and Justice Network, what it does and what its function is in San Joaquin County, and what we can do about issues that are important to us. So that's pretty much how Peace and Justice Network started, and that's pretty much why we're keeping connections going and why we put on the events that we do. Christie's been around for as long as the network has been around. And
but the Peace and Justice Network started a long time ago. I've been around, but I think you were in on the ground floor.
Yeah, well, you know, we both started with the Central America, the Latin America Support Committee, when we were talking about anti-Contra aid, you know, trying to stop our meddling in Nicaragua and El Salvadoran affairs, and from there, there was all sorts of other escapades that our government has
anti-nuclear.
Anti-nuclear. That's pretty much what the Peace and Justice Network started with, and since then we've just been trying to speak truth to power and trying to talk about a more sustainable world that we'd all like to see happen. And so anyway, coming up now, it's the beginning of November. And so we're looking at a peaceful holiday fair that we're about to kick off.
Every year it's the first weekend in December.
Yeah.
Has been for 31 years now.
Yeah, 31 years, man.
31 years. It started as a holiday fair to offer toys that were anti-violence. So no G.I. Joes, no guns and warships and fighter planes, but alternatives, toys that kids could play with and create peaceful scenarios.
Yeah, and then it got into things that were more sustainable and more meaningful for adults to give to each other. Because sometimes the holidays, you just feel like you just have to get something for somebody. You know, no, it doesn't make a difference, you know, if it's useful or anything. But you know, you're obligated to get something for somebody, and so you just buy something at a Target that, you know, everybody can pick up. But what the holiday fair tries to do is it tries to provide different types of gifts that are a little bit more meaningful and that support causes and issues that will help the world be a better place.
All right, so we have local vendors, local crafters who create stained glass, pottery, soaps, scents, photographs, artwork, clothing.
And the event's always the weekend after Thanksgiving. So this year it's the December 1st and 2nd, 4 to 9 on the Friday the 1st, and from 10 to 2 on December 2nd. And it's at Central United Methodist Church, 3700 Pacific Avenue.
In Stockton.
In Stockton. It's the church that looks like a big fish across the street from UOP. And it's a good time.
Yeah.
It's really you meet good people, good friends. It might be the one time a year when you see these people, and it's just a nice time, a nice peaceful time. There's some very nice music. Last year was exceptional music, and this year will be the same. So,
and just like our other big event, Earth Day, it is a vegetarian, low on the food chain eating event. Donated soups and breads and coffee and hot cider.
And it raises funds for the Peace and Justice Network,
Right.
which is always very nice. About a couple $1,000. And it helps us get some information out to folks and helps us to support what we do. And you mentioned Earth Day. Earth Day is coming up again. This is going to be I think it's the 30th annual. And it's going to be held in Victory Park on April 22nd, Sunday. And it's not too soon to be thinking about that, especially if you're a teacher and you want to participate. We'll be getting information out to schools and to booths, and seeing who wants to sign up for it. It's if you've not been, you ought to come, because it's a free, family-friendly event out at Victory Park from 11 to 4 on Sunday, April 22nd. Actually, this year is on the actual Earth Day. We try to have it on Sunday that's closest to Earth Day, but this time it's actually on Earth Day. And we'll have a March for Science ahead of it. Last year was the first time we had a March for Science, and it was the day before Earth Day, and this time we'll be on the same day. And we'll have some good local musical talent, really interesting booths that can show you how you can impact the Earth in a better way, in a more gentle way.
Tell us how Earth Day started.
Oh, well, the Earth Day here in Stockton that we celebrate, I got together with Linda Whittock in 1989, and yeah, back when I had a few more hairs and a little bit more energy, but we were just thinking we were sad about the demise of there was an arts festival or an art exhibition in Victory Park that actually they ended up moving it out to Oak Grove Park, and it became the Asparagus Festival, and those two things merged. And so we were saying, well, gee, Victory Park, it's really sad not to have something that's in town that we can celebrate, spring. And then, I don't know, we just started thinking about Earth Day. And the first Earth Day we had out at Oak Park, where Billy Hebert Field is, where they're pretty much the corner of California and Alpine, where Alpine dead ends. And we had it there for about, 5 or 6 years, and then moved to UOP. And then from there we moved to Weber Point, and that's when Susan Loico took it over and really expanded it and made it a fantastic event. And after some conflicts with the Asparagus Festival being on pretty much the same weekend, it's always the 4th or the 5th weekend of April, we just decided, well, how about if we just take it off of Weber Point and go to Victory Park, which is a much more neighborhood-friendly and inviting place. Doesn't have a fence around it, and it just seems more inviting, and it's older, and it's in a wonderful neighborhood. And so Victory Park it was, and we've been there ever since for about 10 years now, and I've come back to work on it, and we have some great volunteers. It's a lot of fun. Of course, there's no pay for anybody doing work on it. It's all
the
volunteer.
Holiday Fair and Earth Day are all volunteers. Yeah. Nobody gets paid.
Yeah.
Planning it, although we do give recognition to musicians.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the small honoraria.
It's also a fundraiser, but it also takes a lot of funds to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's really in terms of a cost per educational unit, it is just amazingly thrifty. It's just a great event. It's a good feel-good time, and if you want to come and participate, contact us at Connections, and you can take a look at Connections and keep up on your paper. So you'll get announcements of Earth Day and how you can participate, because it's just a lot of fun.
So that brings us to Connections.
Yeah, Connections. Yeah, so Connections has been published for. It's sort of been the consistent thing that Peace and Justice Network does. I'm not saying, you know, the Holiday Fair 31 years and Earth Day 30 years. I think Connections has been around for like, well, maybe, I don't know, since 1986.
Possibly.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
remember it
yeah.
as a mimeograph sheet, if
Yeah.
anybody knows what I mean when I say mimeograph.
Yeah.
We cranked them out.
Yeah, yeah. The smell of ditto paper.
Ditto paper, and
Yeah.
cutting those stencils was
Yeah.
not easy. And
Yeah.
then the cut and paste that Lori Littman
did.
Marge Freese, and
Yeah, and then
Ellen Lyon, and all
Yeah.
those people who worked
Yeah.
on it back then.
Yeah, and then ultimately me, and then I
And Bruce.
took over editing the thing, and it's been a real educational experience for me, because I get to read all these articles that are talking about you know, sustainability and what we can positively do, but amidst where we are in this world of ours, where it seems that we're always facing the never-ending greed cycle, where people just can't help themselves but think of short-term solutions to long-term problems. And so we have a lot of people just you know, very frustrated with the direction that our leaders are taking us, because in California, we've been fortunate most recently, because we do have some forward-looking folks who are thinking about the environment and are thinking about you know, peaceful change and you know, civil rights. But nationally and by our effect on the international stage, we have a long way to go to make this place a more peaceful and just world.
And people being frustrated with the news they get from the mass media.
Yeah.
With media being owned by very few large corporations and conservative and beyond conservative,
Yeah.
but getting the same news no matter where you look, and getting news that isn't even news. People are being distracted by following stars in their lives, or that have nothing to do with what's going on in real people's lives. So Connections brings you back to reality, the good and the bad.
Yeah, yeah, because there are positive things that are happening. There are leaders who are trying to get things done. It's just an uphill push when there is so much money that is being thrown at you know, making certain that the people who are already very well off stay very well off, or get even more well off. I mean, you look at the recent, the current, the tax discussion that's going to be going on for the next couple months. It is just blatantly obvious that that the folks who are in power right now are just going to try to grab as much as they possibly can while they have the keys to the cookie jar, or the keys to the candy store, and it's they're just rushing. Just, I mean, there is no attempt to try to gain any sort of popular support for these tax measures that are just, if anybody was really was interested in looking at the numbers, it is just obscene as to how much money is going to be transferred from low-income people and middle-income people to the very wealthiest, who already are so much head and shoulders above the rest of us that we have no concept of how rich they are. You know, there's just news that's coming out on a regular basis that you know, today was talking about Paradise Papers. This talks about how well-off folks are hiding their money overseas, and I think everybody sort of has always known that people hid their money overseas and that they didn't want to be taxed, and you know that Apple, you know, moved their money from Ireland to Jersey so they could save $200 billion in taxes.
Jeez.
You know, it's, I mean, but these little snippets, it's like, you know, at what point did people, you know, start thinking that this, I mean, Apple was, you know, I've always thought that they were the iconoclasts. They were the folks who were, you know, against the establishment. And here it's, you know, and people are, you know, wear their iPhones with pride that, you know, look what I'm wearing. I have a, you know, I'm a I'm an anti-establishment
a
person.
rebel.
I'm a rebel, whereas the Apple is just trying to evade. What they do is they avoid taxes by parking their money overseas. And now what the Republicans would like to do is they would say, oh, let's just not tax them, and then what they'll do is these companies will take their money and bring that money back to the United States to invest. They hope they would invest. I mean, a lot of this inequity started in the Reagan era, where there was a massive tax giveaway when he came in, with the hopes that people who were given that money would then invest it in the United States and provide jobs. Because if you remember back in the early Reagan days, you may not, but in the early Reagan days, there was like double-digit unemployment. It was just really, really grim. And so this whole idea of a tax cut to employ people was real enticing. But when you give rich people money to invest, they're only going to invest if there are people out there buying their products. And if the people who are going to be buying their products don't have any money, then why would they put money into a gas station that has no lines, or where there's no customers? There's just no reason for an investor to put money to hire somebody to do nothing. And so that's what essentially we're being asked to buy now, is that we're being asked to say, yeah, well, just give these folks a tax cut, and then what they'll do is they'll obviously invest in plant and equipment to hire more people to produce to produce stuff that nobody can buy, because right now too many people are up to their eyeballs in debt or underwater, or still haven't gotten a pay raise for the last 5 years. And so there is no demand out there. That's why the economy is dragging along. It's not because the rich people don't have enough money. It's because the poor folks who will be spending the money don't have enough money.
They don't have access to jobs that provide them with money that they can spend beyond just bare necessities.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, if you want to have a tax plan that is going to actually employ people, well, how about if you just start with a minimum wage, and increase the minimum wage so people have more money in their pockets, so that they will buy things, and then give a reason for investors to put money into their plant and equipment, rather than giving them the money for the plant and equipment and then hoping that the customers show up.
And training the folks to work in those.
Yeah, it's definitely cart before the horse.
Yeah.
So anyway, but a lot of these issues, and that's what, by editing Connections for the last, 20 years, 25 years, 20 years, you sort of see these issues. They're not new issues. When I look at a Connections back from 1985, 1987, they're the same issues. I mean, global warming was in Connections in the late 1980s, and people think that it's a new issue. It's not a new issue at all. I mean, greenhouse, it's been taught in environmental science books forever. I mean, people know what a greenhouse is. If you get sold enough advertisements to oil companies to tell you, oh no, this isn't happening, this isn't really happening, keep on driving your SUV, there's no problem getting 10 miles per gallon. You hear that over and over and over again. After a while, and you're not offered any alternative vehicle, after a while you just say, hell with it.
Well, we're totally dependent on it. Cities are built for cars. We're dependent on it, particularly in Stockton, where there isn't great mass transit, although it is better. All our buses are electric. Yes. But and we had some really nice articles in here by Robert Oakes about Strodes, about making neighborhoods a lot more friendly to walking, a lot more friendly to bicycles.
Bicycles, exactly. And one wonderful thing that's happened in Stockton in the last few years, it seems that our city council is learning how to accept the limits to growth, in terms of not automatically approving sprawl, and looking at infill, and looking at more sustainable living situations. And so, having a neighborhood that would have a store, or have a restaurant, or have have a dry cleaners next to your home or something. So you don't have to drive to all these places that a 4-lane or 8-lane, like a Hammer Lane. You can go walk downtown and get the things you need.
Right. That'd be great.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you used to live next to Yosemite. And that's
Yosemite is a nice little neighborhood. The Miracle Mile. There are lots
great.
of places you can walk to, but there are few places. Like that.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of neighborhoods have already been built in a way that have to be retrofit, and so it requires some investment. And for that investment to happen, there are not going to be new developers coming in there because they're not going to make a profit off of it. So what has to happen is there has to be some urban planning that has to be agreed upon.
And we have people who are engaged in doing that with the revitalization of downtown. And
that's right.
Yeah, things are moving forward.
Things are moving in a positive direction in Stockton. Stockton, Stockton's a wonderful town. It has some really wonderful things going for it. When I say that to people who don't live in Stockton or outside, they look at me like I'm crazy. But it's not at all. Stockton is a great town. It's a wonderfully diverse town. It has a small town feel, and is open to learning things. And is open to, I mean, it's had some bumps along the way, but the arena and the downtown, a lot of the downtown investment that was, that led the city to bankruptcy, really. They're learning from those and saying, well, no, we're not going to go into that American Savings building for City Hall. We're going to stay downtown, and I mean the waterfront is a nice idea. I hopefully the old City Hall will find some positive civic use that everybody can rally around. But the downtown is really charming.
Huge potential. It's beautiful. We have 1,400 miles of waterway around us. Where these are all things that we can build on and take advantage of and get our children out into nature more and less of the city feel. So for connections, let's go back to connections. We're always looking for people who want to contribute to connections as well. So you want to talk about how that happens?
Connections, we we publish every other month, and so we just have the recent one that we have here is whenever we're coming up with articles, we're talking about things that are going to last for a couple months, and for better for worse, Korea is an issue that is going to be on our tablets for a while, because we have a belligerent president who is consistently trying to stir the pot and to upset folks. But what we have in Connections, it covers international things and national issues and local issues, and we'd like to get more and more local. The reason why it's called Connections is it tries to make connections between what's happening in Stockton and the larger world and the nation, and also connections between people. And so if we have the idea is to try to give people a reason to take action, give people a reason to get up out of their chairs and to come to a meeting or come to a exhibit or go to a play or just get out and meet with people who have concerns about the same sorts of issues. So the issues we cover are in this latest issue, we have on page 3 we're talking about the DREAM Act of 2017, which is the sending back of the children to their countries of origin, and it's something that Donald Trump said was going to happen in 60 or 90 days, and said, well, let's have Congress change this because I don't want it to be on my watch. And so we threw the ball into Congress's court, and of course Congress is dropping it. And so DACA is going to be a dead issue, I'm afraid.
It looks like they have until 2018. March of 2018 or something. They're supposed to do something or drop it.
And so the thing is that March of 2018, I mean, they're going to be talking about this tax bill for a real long time because it's so flawed. But anyway, so DACA is in here. We're talking about again, single payer health care is something that we've always covered and are really strong advocates of. I myself, I work in fiscal work in nonprofit agency, and every year I dread open enrollment when we have to figure out how to tell people that they can't afford their health care anymore, or they have to make some choices that are really unpalatable in terms of high deductibles and high copays and all the horrible things that go along with our profit-laden healthcare system. And so anyway, we are always looking for folks who have some interesting discussion items on single payer, because it is, and from my perspective as a fiscal person, it's again, just like any of the issues that Connections covers, what we're covering here is ultimately what will have to happen, or we are going to be in very deep trouble. Like, say, if we're talking about not addressing climate change, if we don't address climate change, we're in very deep trouble. If we do not adopt a single payer system of healthcare, which the rest of the world already has decided is the most efficient way to deliver healthcare, if we don't do that, we are in very, very deep trouble, because people are going to die because we've decided to put the profits of healthcare companies.
People are dying. They're losing their homes. We're just running ourselves into the mud. Yeah, and the repeal and replace that the Republicans tried to push through over the summertime was just so unpopular that they couldn't even face doing it, even though they've been running on it for the last 7 years. You know, it's the reason why they got elected in large part. So having connections to help you understand how you can talk to your neighbors about how important this is, to unravel that crazy what kind of news is that? Fake news?
Yeah.
But unravel that confusion about what is so important about single-payer healthcare and how we shouldn't be afraid of something like that, but embrace it.
And also to connect you with local organizations that are doing something about it. There's a single-payer health organization that's in the calendar that gets together on a monthly basis to educate folks about how single-payer would work. And so the idea here is to try to help you make connections with advocates who are pushing that. And then on the next page, on page 6, talks about gun violence, and that there's the Cleveland School Remembers group is, if everybody, people who lived in Stockton for a while know that Cleveland School was the site of a massacre of school children back in the 90s. Or late 80s?
Late 80s, early 90s, like the first time something like that happened.
Yeah. And so so teachers who survived that are educating folks on this gun violence. And, you know, of course, gun violence is something that visits us very often.
Much too regularly.
Yeah, much too regularly. And with the idea that, of course, we can never discuss gun control because that would just be too crass and disrespectful of the victims. But every time we have a mass shooting, there is just shock and wonder as to how this could happen. And then people scramble to get details on the background of the person who the perpetuator of the violence, and you know they come up with some interesting facts. But bottom line is, you know, you can, you know, coming up with a biography of the shooter is not going to do anything to prevent the next killing. What's going to prevent the next killing is to get automatic weapons and handguns out of the hands of most people. There is in a civilized society, in much of the rest of the world, you do not see these sorts of killings. You know, it's just not, especially, you know, not within the last 2 or 3 months. You know, we've had today or yesterday there was a church shooting, but you know, a month ago there was something in Las Vegas. Before that there was, you know, every month it seems like there is this shock about gun violence. And the Cleveland School Remembers is a educational group that is focusing on what people are doing to positively impact that. So, and then positively make some change in terms of gun violence. But it's going to take a lot of people standing up and making it a very strong issue. And then there's some interesting things here about Korea on page 7. That is
discussion continues.
discussion, and it's a lot of it is historical, talking about how the United States has treated North Korea, and how in a persistent, very bullying way, has turned North Korea pretty much into the paranoid state that it is now. And so if you would read through that article, you'll find out, how the United States has, through its power, has used the power to come up with the creature that we see in North Korea now. And so anyway, so it's a very interesting educational issue. So there's no local anti-Korea war organization, but I think at some point we're going to have to start thinking about marching against against a war in Korea, because
it's happening in other towns.
Yeah, it is. On page 8, we're talking about the Disclose Act, and that's where California will now, when you run for election, you're going to have to disclose who your major donors are, and that's a good step towards some campaign finance reform. Then my favorite stuff is stuff that a lot of folks don't like to read, but it's financial stuff. It's talking about money, because page 9 is talking about budget choices being moral choices, and talking about how when we choose to fund the military to the extent that we do, and to not fund our educational system or our infrastructure system, or put investments into sustainable energy. When we don't do those sorts of things, and we put money into the defense industry, which just happens to be the one industry where we have a comparative advantage to other countries in the world. I mean, we're the number one exporter of military goods by far. I think we export more than the other 8 countries combined. So when we put money into that industry, and I just heard Trump talking about it today, how he wants to sell Japan more military goods. For one thing, you're investing in destruction, which has to be repaired at some point. It would just seem to be more logical and more sustainable for us to invest in things that aren't destructive.
Right. And that kind of discussion goes on even into the next page with
the next 2 pages. Yeah,
your articles on tax breaks and how they don't create jobs, and tax cuts in the Congress's tax reform is explained.
That's right. Yeah, and this was this came out before they actually released their final paper, but it's pretty much what they're talking about in terms of cutting the corporate tax rate, limiting tax on corporations' profits overseas, cutting the tax rate paid by high-income business owners, repeal the tax on estates worth more than $5 million. These are the things that skew the tax system more to the rich, and when you give people more money, it tends to give them more power. And so what they'll be able to, what well-off people will be able to do, is they'll be able to buy more politicians. They'll be able to buy more radio stations locally and nationwide. They'll be able to install the people that they want to install in regulatory positions. And it'll just make our lives a lot more difficult, and it really will make our life. It will turn the United States to looking more and more like a third world country, where just a very few of the very well off own most everything, and the rest of us are going to be scrambling for the crumbs. So that's pretty much the tax take. And then on pages 12 and 13, pretty much talk about environmental stuff. We have some on a regular basis now. Puentes, the cooperative garden out in Boggs Tract, is providing us articles. That's where Susan Loico is spending a lot of her time now. And so page 12 talks about sustainable agriculture, and page 13 talks about just environmental stuff in general, talking about wind power in this case. And then 14 and 15 talking about energy, talking about page 14 we're talking about Hurricane Harvey. Remember that, the Hurricane Harvey, which pretty much submerged Houston, and how big oil pretty much, which is pretty much what makes Houston Houston, has made Houston into a huge toxic pit now, because the flood waters rose, the refineries got flooded, and all the oil that was in there and all the other toxic things that they produce were not protected, because Texas does not believe in regulation. So a lot of their businesses are now making the water pretty nasty. Then talking about world population, article by Lee Miller, and he writes really good articles on world population and how it's an ignored issue, that the amount of people who are on this planet have a direct impact as to the quality of life. 350 Stockton, talking about our the amount of carbon that is in our environment, in our atmosphere, and how it has to be capped, or we're in deep trouble.
A beautiful poem by our poet laureate, Tama Brisbane, and we are always looking for folks to contribute your form of writing, whether it's poetry or rap or an article or a letter to the editor.
Right.
Input from the community is crucial.
Right, exactly, yeah. And yeah, so letters are really wonderful. Articles about what's happening in your neighborhood. As we're sort of going through the paper here, hopefully you get a feel for what the impact, what the thrust is. The idea is to try to get people to become aware of issues that aren't covered in the media, because it's just not profitable, and also to get people to be connected with these issues, so that they don't feel powerless when they get upset about a toxic pit like Houston, or when they read about how climate change can't be curbed, or when they see that it seems that we're careening towards war with Korea, that there is a community of folks who care about this stuff. Connections is mailed out to 1,700 people for every issue. We produce 6,000 issues, 6,000 copies. And so if you're interested in helping to distribute the paper, contact us. You can take a look in the paper, or take a look at our website, pjnsjc.org. And anyway, so then more talking about here a toxic democracy corrupting web of the Trump empire, and that sort of touches on some of the stuff that just came out today in terms of some of the amounts of money that is parked overseas and by very well-off people. And then another page talking about making biking great and converting a stroad to a street, talking about more sustainable things in Stockton. And then page 18 and 19 pretty much talk about recent or the calendar type of events. And the back page was is local information, talking about an event that happened yesterday at Boggs Tract, which is a great event. It was a fundraiser for the farm, and then a nice essay on how nice and pleasant Stockton is. Because
it's great. This is your voice in print. We have the radio, an amazing community radio station. That's your voice on air. This is your voice in print. And believe it or not, print is still important. It's still happening for people who can pick it up local newspapers that gives you the news without mass media backing.
Right. Yeah, and you know, to say that you know, well, you know, this is just a biased newspaper. Well, you know, every newspaper you find or every media outlet has a bias. It just may not overtly say it. So when you we overtly say that we are for peace and justice and a sustainable world, and that is our bias. Whereas, you know, for-profit companies or for-profit media won't overtly come out and say that they are not going to, like NBC will not cover something that is critical of Westinghouse because they are owned by Westinghouse, and so you're not going to hear an anti-nuclear power plant article on NBC. Or there are all sorts of advertisers who have major sway over what the media puts out. And so it may not be an overt bias. It may not be, you know, conscious, what is it? The censorship. It's not overt censorship, but it is sort of in the back of the mind of. I remember discussing this with Michael Fitzgerald about 20 years ago or something on John Moriarty's Talking It Through, and he was kind of offended that we were saying that there was actual censorship at the Record. And what we were trying to say is there's no, I mean, the editor doesn't just come in and just redline things, although they could, and in some cases they would, but it's just sort of like the subtle censorship that you know that what a certain story won't sell because it doesn't, there's an advertiser who doesn't want to hear that take on it because it might be critical of what they do, or you might not see a whole lot of articles that are similar to a Bernie Sanders campaign against Hillary Clinton. You know that people were not going to give Bernie Sanders a real good. Did not give him a whole lot of airtime, did not give him a whole lot of credibility, because they knew that, well, everybody knew that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And if you wanted to have any sort of in with that regime, if you wanted to be able to get the inside scoop, that you did not want to do anything to offend that person. And so by not covering Bernie Sanders, what you would do is you help along a Hillary Clinton campaign, and hopefully you would maybe land a spot in the administration, or you might end up getting a scoop, or you might end up getting a book, or a book's out of it. So these biases are sort of subtle. Sometimes they're not so subtle, and it's important for people to be able to critically understand what's going on. And not to say that there are people out there who are overtly trying to just undermine everything, but it's just part of the way the system works. It's it's just human nature that you want to succeed, you want to do well, you want to make money, and the things to avoid if that will keep you from making money.
We're not making money.
No, we're not.
We're not making money. We are just making news come to your door in a way that is fair, open, and for peace, justice, and a sustainable world.
Yeah, Peace and Justice Network is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's a educational organization, and so everything we do is to educate. And
we forgot to mention that bringing the radio station here was part of what Peace and Justice did, and we are so lucky that we were approached by Common Frequency to begin this whole process and to find the fantastic people working with Governor Don who are building this amazing radio station.
Yeah, it's just amazing that you see what sort of work it's taken to bring this station to where it is today.
Many years
of
plodding along because we didn't know what we were doing, but finally folks came around who knew what they were doing.
And cared about it, and nobody's making any money. I mean, the thing is that the Peace and Justice Network pretty much lives off of about $15,000, $15,000 to $18,000, and
and that comes from people like you who are listening, who send us. Sometimes we'll get $5 in the mail, a $5 bill, or a check for $35, which is what we call a membership, but is just basically what we figure would really help if you could spare $35.
Right.
And some people give $10 every month throughout the year. It
Yeah.
just depends, but it's those people who send us their donations that keep us going.
We have no government funding. We have advertising in Connections, which we're working to
Yeah, if you want to advertise,
you want to advertise in Connections. The rates are really inexpensive.
Yep.
But it's just sort of a local effort. It's a nonprofit. It's a standalone nonprofit. It's not part of the Peace and Freedom Party, or it's not part of. It's just Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin County, a 501c3 nonprofit. And so it's just something to take part in if you have a chance. If you get frustrated with the way things are. We're one opportunity, and what we'd like to do is for the paper is to also advertise and get information out for other nonprofits who are doing things in this community. We regularly have something in, like I was saying, for the single payer, but we regularly have something in here from Restore the Delta, because the tunnels are a major, the twin tunnels, the water scheme that Governor Brown is trying to push on the state is a major environmental issue in this area, and it's a major unifying issue amongst everybody who lives in Stockton, because everybody in Stockton is against this project, and yet it persists. And so what we need to do is to make certain that people know that Barbara's group exists, that they're making great progress, that this tunnel thing is not the slam dunk that I think some folks in Sacramento thought it was going to be. In fact, it looks like it's going to lose. And so it's just I don't know what Barbara said at her last radio show, but I understand she has a weekly radio show now that will hopefully keep the focus on what is happening and what people can do, because it is really crunch time with respect to Restore the Delta. Because Brown is going to be, he's not going to be governor anymore at the end of 2018. So once he goes, there is not, I don't think there's anybody else who is going to push for these tunnels. And so, and all of the Democratic gubernatorial candidates are all against the tunnels, and so and generally this state does vote Democratic. It would be hard to see a Republican governor taking office in 2018. Yeah, but not in this environment. Yeah. So the thing is that if these tunnels can be held off until Brown is gone, we might have dodged a bullet here. And so that, and Barbara is just so key to that. So anyways, and you would see her out there at Earth Day on April 22nd as well. And that will be right in the middle of decision-making time.
Right.
So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So good. So
that's it.
What else?
I think we've talked about a lot.
I think we just about hit it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll be back again with who knows who. Who knows who, but we're going to try to make this a regular feature, Peace and Justice Network. And if you're interested in coming and talking with us, let us know.
Please. Thank you.
Thanks.